Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about how do we find the coordinates of the midpoint of a line segment. Well, first we need to know what a midpoint is. By definition, a midpoint is a point if and only if it divides a segment into two congruent parts. This is also the same as finding the middle of a line. The way to remember that is midpoint kind of sounds like middle. So let's take a look at a perfectly horizontal and a perfectly vertical line and see if we can find the middle or the midpoint. Well, if the line is vertical or horizontal, in order to find the distance of the line, we can just count boxes. So let's start with AB. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes long. The distance is 7. To find the middle, I would just cut that in half, which would be 3.5. So from A, 1, 2, 3, and a half. That is the middle of my line, which is located at 5.5, 0. Similarly with CD, again, counting boxes to find the distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boxes. Dividing that in half, I get 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which should be located at 0, 2, sorry. So those are my midpoints of a horizontal and a vertical line. Now, when we did the distance lesson, you guys saw that if the line isn't horizontal or vertical, we needed a formula to actually find the distance. The same is going to be true for midpoint. If my line is not horizontal or vertical, I'm going to need a way of finding the midpoint that doesn't rely on counting boxes. If you look at the coordinates, you may already see what the midpoint formula might look like. Since the y-coordinates of A and B are both 0, obviously the midpoint's going to stay a y-coordinate of 0. But if you look at 9 and 2, think about how could I get 5.5. 5.5 is actually the average of 9 and 2. That means if I add them together and cut it in half, I'd get 5.5. Similarly with CD, if I add 7 and -3 together, I get 4, and then divided by 2, I get 2. So the midpoint formula is nothing more than averaging your coordinates together, and it looks like this. So basically, I would take my x1 and my x2, cut it in half, and that would give me the x coordinate of my midpoint. And then I would do the same for y. Add the two y coordinates together and cut it in half. Notice that the midpoint formula has a comma in it because you're actually finding a location. So you need an x and you need a y. So your midpoint is two numbers, an x and a y. So let's take a look at how this looks like with an example. So starting with example 1. A is at 1, 2, and B is at 7, 6. -6, sorry. Okay. Let's use the formula to find the midpoint. So again, the formula, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. It doesn't matter which one you use as x1 and which one uses x2, as long as you're using both the x's, and similarly for y. So I'm going to add 1 and 7. Those are my two x values. Divide by 2. 2 plus -6 divided by 2. Okay, 1 plus 7 is 8. 2 plus -6 is -4. And then dividing, we get 4, -2. That is the location of my midpoint. So there is also another way you can do this using your coordinate grid and counting boxes, except instead of using distance, I'm going to use slope or rise and run. So if I calculate my rise and run from A to B, the run is -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my rise is -8, my run is 6. If I cut that in half, I would get -4 and 3. That is my location of the midpoint, which if you look is exactly what we got, 4, -2. So if you are a visual person and you like to see it, you can plot your points, find your rise and run, and cut those rise and run numbers in half, and you will always get your midpoint. You'll see that that method is easier, especially when you're already given the midpoint and you need to find an endpoint, like this example in number 2. So they already gave us the midpoint, which is -2, 2. And they gave us one of the endpoints, 0, -4. And they want us to find the other endpoint. So keep in mind, this is half the line, right? X to M is halfway. I need to find where Y is. If you follow the direction of the line from X to M, you know Y has to be somewhere up here, right? Because that's the way the line is traveling. So I know my Y is going to be in the second quadrant somewhere. So if you utilize that method I just showed you using rise and run, from X to M, my rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and my run is -2. Since that's half the line, I just have to duplicate that. I go up another 6, and I go over another 2. That is the location of Y. And that is at -1, -2, -3, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I'll show you with the formula. Now the only reason why the formula is a little harder here is because you don't know one of the coordinates. So you're going to have an unknown in your formula. It's not simply just plugging numbers in, right? So I know that one of the coordinates for X is 0, but I don't know the other X. And when I saw that, it has to equal the midpoint number of -2. And similarly for Y, I know one of the Y's is -4. I don't know the other Y, but I know it has to equal 2. See the difference? The unknown is in the formula. Now, in order to get rid of the fraction, you cross multiply. So we're going to get 0 plus x2 equals -4. Here we get -4 plus y2 equals +4. And then to get x by itself, I'd move the 0 over, so it's just x2 equals -4. Here I'd add 4, and y2 equals 8. So you do get the same answer. I just think it's easier to use the rise and run when you know the midpoint already and you're looking for an endpoint so that you don't have to worry about getting rid of a denominator and cross-multiplying. But either way, you do get the correct answer. So why don't you guys try example number 3. I'll give you guys a moment. I'll plot the points for you. So again, they're giving us the midpoint and one of the endpoints. So I'm going to use the rise and run method. So to get from P to M, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the left 1, 2. To get the location of Q, I'm going to duplicate that. Down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 2. So I know Q is located at -1, -3. And similarly, I'll set up the formula for you just to show you. 3 plus the other x value divided by 2 has to equal 1. 5 plus the other y value divided by 2 has to equal 1. And like we did before, we're going to cross multiply. 3 plus x equals 2. 5 plus y equals 2. Minus 3. x2 equals -1, minus 5, y2 equals -3. So my other coordinate is -1, -3. So hopefully this helps, and hopefully you understand midpoint.